It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club program where we discuss social issues. We also talk politics and issues that are around us or that are happening around us. I know this year is a very busy year. We have elections already. We have seen many different political parties campaigning. We also have a lot that is going on, and we'll be bringing you all the stories, and we will try by as much as possible to bring you most of the candidates, if not all the candidates who will be contesting these elections, be it at local level, at parliamentary level, at the presidential level, because the idea is to give you the choice so that you know who you are voting for, and you have the idea of the people that you vote for. But I know in 2018, some of the people realized later or not knew the councillors that they voted for after the elections. They just went and voted without knowing exactly who they were voting for. So it is your duty as a citizen to actually know who you are voting for and make sure you understand what they promise. And today in the program, we'll be talking to Divine Mhambi-Hove. He is the leader of the Nationalists Alliance Party, and he is also the deputy chair for the International Relations and Re-Engagement Committee in Poland. He contested the 2018 elections as the presidential candidate, of course, and we'll be talking to him to hear what are the plans for 2023, what were the lessons for 2018, and what is it that he is promising us this year. So welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in this place.
Yeah, so it's also a pleasure to meet you. You are some of the, quite a number of the people who contested the 2018 presidential elections.
Yes.
And probably I just like by saying, who is Mhambi, so that people have an idea of the men that we are talking to.
Thank you very much. My name is Divine, like you've said. I'm a 45-year-old man. I was born in Bulawayo. I originate from Berengwa. I did most of my education here in Bulawayo, in the locations, and then advanced the level at Gifford High School, and I also did some accounting at Bulawayo Polytech. I've worked in several companies, including the National Railways of Zimbabwe, Nyore, AFA, Fire Engineers, Yeoman Products, mainly in managerial capacity, but now I'm an entrepreneur and also a politician. So,
yeah, I mean, at what point did you say, I now want to join politics? I want to... Yeah.
Well, I happen to be one of the people in the generation that was affected by ESAP, that was affected by the BRS checks, if you remember, if the bond notes, the currency destabilization soon after the land reform programs. And I was one of the young guys that really looked forward to a good career, were sent to school hoping that you get a good job and you're a better person in life. But because of the circumstances of my parents, unable to pay for most of my education, I found myself struggling to go to school. And those were the early signals that something was not right in our society. And then when I got employed, the salary most of the time was not very good. I remember my first pay, I had set aside a pair of shoes because I was working in a shoe company, Nyore. It had a clothing outlet. And I'd set aside a pair of shoes which I wanted to buy end of the month when I get paid. And I was buying this on staff price, by the way. But when I got the pay, it just didn't suffice, and I couldn't buy that pair of shoes. I remember I set aside those shoes for like 3 months trying to buy the shoes, and I couldn't make it. This is the early signals that conscientized me to try and find out what really is taking place in our country, and naturally got involved. But the real moment happened when I was at the Polytech, the issue of fees, study material, and many other challenges. So looking at all those things, and also the economic situation facing our country really motivates you to start to consider, what can I do, what can I say? How can I take part in the politics of the country? That's how it all started.
Yeah, I mean, it's normally, like you're saying, that many people do struggle. And starting a political party is not easy.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, worse at running at presidential level.
Of course.
That should have been a bold decision that you decided to take there.
Zimbabwe does not give you a lot of choice, really, for people that want to do a lot of things. But at the end of the day, some things have got to be done. Starting a political party for us was more of an avenue. It seemed the only way to make an impact other than just being an activist or making comments on social media. We decided, let's get involved in this thing. Actually, it was after also familiarizing with the Constitution, the electoral laws, the provisions in it, and you see, look, this is achievable, this is doable, let's give it a shot. I know a lot of people then begin to think, why go for the presidential level and not the councils and the MPs? It is our strong belief that we need a holistic approach to the national issues, which emanate from the general holistic concept of running a nation or a state, which really needs a voice right from the top rather than just from the MPs and the councillors. So we decided, let's just go for it long haul.
Yeah, so you mentioned something that is quite important, that it's not just about the presidential, but it is also about the council and the MPs.
Yes.
And there's the Nationalist Party, looking at the previous election.
Yes.
How many councils did you field and how many parliamentary?
We did not field any parliamentary, for any parliamentary seats. We actually fielded for councillors, 5 of them in Blawa. But as I said, it is our view that the challenges facing our country need a very visible platform. Our view is that the impact of our ideology, our ideas, can be better heard from a national position rather than a council or a parliamentary position. I know the significance of consolidating parliamentary seats and council seats in achieving the overall objective, but there is also the significant platform that you acquire when you participate at national level. And mind you, again, this is where we differ from many other political parties. Our view is that the idea is not just necessarily to win the election, but to be heard, to be seen, and to add a voice, because we know that political parties do copy manifestos, ideas from other political parties. So as we speak from a national point of view, we know other political parties will pick 1 or 2 of our ideas. And in fact, I'm very sure that now I had certain very prominent people now begin to speak our language pertaining the issue of removing a government, which we've been very clear about. And we are happy that people are picking up those ideas. So one of the overall objectives is to say, how can we influence government and which platform works best for that? And the national level is a very good platform.
Yeah, so you have already said it, that for you, you're not in it to win it, but to influence ideas.
The idea is not necessarily to win. You see, when you are motivated by winning, then you'll do whatever it takes. Even when you don't, when you have not won, you find it hard to accept. We have said that politics is a race of ideas. And in the process of sharing those ideas, some people pick up your ideas and some people copy your ideas. But also the end result of winning an election is a reward from the electorate. In other words, if your ideas, your visions, your plans are visible enough, the electorate rewards you by awarding you the position. So you can't necessarily go into an election with the primary objective of saying, I want to win. But you say, I want to present myself to the people, and they determine if we are worth being put in any position.
So looking at the presidential results of 2018,
yes.
You, after the elections, what were your impressions?
I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Mind you, I was the only candidate that officially pulled out from the elections out of the 23, I think. I am the one that announced that I'm pulling out of the elections because of certain circumstances that were prevailing at that time. But look, there were 23 candidates. I think we came up number 10. We did not put much campaign material. We did not travel that much. We just utilized the social media and other platforms that were there for us. But we came 10. And I know our results were much, much better than some big names that are known. And so that was impressive for us, given the effort that we had put and that we were pretty new in the electoral space. And that was a good start for us.
So there's something that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. You filed for nomination.
Yes.
And a few days before the elections,
yes,
you pulled out.
Yes.
But
I announced that I was pulling out.
Yeah, but you're already on the ballot.
The law says that there's a given time in which you must announce you're pulling out.
Yeah.
So that your name is not printed on the ballot paper. Yeah. But there's a technicality in that there's a committee called the MPLC committee, which is a liaison committee of political parties and ZEC. The decisions that we needed to make, the key decisions that we had made, we wanted to make with ZEC, came late, came after the cutoff date of the nominations, of the printing of the ballot papers. So it was that meeting, the final meeting, that made the decision to pull out of the elections possible. But unfortunately, it was after the ballot papers had been printed, and as a result, my name was still on the ballot paper. I got the votes, even though I'd officially announced, even to the followers and voters, that, I'm out of the race, but, still came number 10.
So then how do you end up in Poland?
Okay, so soon after elections, I think you know what happened. The disturbances in Harare, the fuel price disturbances, the Motlanthe Commission, and there was this talk about dialogue. And, an invitation eventually came out from government inviting all political parties whose candidates had participated at national level to be part of the dialogue process. And we accepted that offer, and that's how we ended up being in Poland. The name Poland was actually coined at a meeting by those politicians, because the idea was, there's no agenda, let's come and see what we have to discuss and how we can map the way forward for our country.
And what would you say? So you also benefited the Poland car?
I got the Poland car, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you are driving
I'm driving the Poland car, yes.
Yeah, so one of the achievements of Poland was getting a car.
It's not an achievement.
Or I would say, yeah.
You mean achievement to the person or to the country?
No, to the parties.
To the parties, yes. They got vehicles. The context of those vehicles was, we were going to be going to Harare to and fro every time. Initially, when we started Poland, it was literally every week. And it became a concern. I need to clarify this. It became a concern amongst participants in Poland that we were using personal resources to go up and down Harare. I am 500 kilometers away from Harare. You can't travel, be in Harare the same day, do a 5-hour meeting, come back to Blaawai all the time. So we started engaging government to say, can they not facilitate a provision for us to have vehicles so that we are able to travel up and down? Some people come as far as Victoria Falls, Binga. Those are long distances. And, the circumstances of our country and resources were going to strain us, and government obliged.
Yeah, so what would you say are some of the notable achievements in Poland? That you say, as Poland, this is what we did and we think we achieved this.
One of the things I shout out loud about is the stability. You will agree that just before the dialogue and the formation of Poland, the environment was very toxic. It was highly charged. It was very electrical, and anything could have happened. And I'm certain beyond any reasonable doubt that that coming together of politicians did dilute the toxic space, political space in our country. And so for us, that alone was a good thing. The ability to sit down and dialogue and discuss matters also is very significant, because it has set a tone in our country, which may not be felt now, but even as we go ahead in future elections, that it is actually possible for politicians to sit down and talk. Because no matter how much of a conflict is in any country or any situation, the last point is dialogue. But also, if you remember, the currency was misbehaving. There was serious hyperinflation and particularly electronic money. We were able, as Poland, to summon ministers, the governor, and have a frank and candid discussion with them as to why they were not able to harness that inflation and the hyperinflation, as it were. And, being government ministers and government officials, they always try and come up with these ununderstandable explanations. And we then questioned the validity of those explanations. For example, that they could not tell the source of electronic money, EcoCash. Somebody would just wake up with $1 million in their EcoCash. And RBZ has got a financial intelligence unit. We questioned why RBZ couldn't pick who's the source of that money and why it could not be traced. And if you recall again, a law had actually been passed that Forex was now not going to be used in the country. We had a meeting at State House and convinced His Excellency to say it's too early to pull out the use of Forex, and government obliged, and today we are using Forex. So these are some of the salient achievements that Poland has made, and we stand very proud of that.
Those are remarkable achievements that you're mentioning. One of the things that people are talking about right now is the NGO Bill, which is likely to affect a number of not only employment in terms of the NGOs, but the people who are benefiting from these NGOs. Do you think Poland has a way of intervening?
We've got a serious problem in our country, which is ideological. And so one has got to be careful in answering such questions, responding to that, because we want to send the right message to the electorate. The main issue is not really about the bills or the NGOs. It's about the ideology of the political space in our country. It cannot be that we seem to be going in a direction that reverses the ultimate cause of the independence of our country. And that needs to be articulated very carefully. The concept of independence, the ideology of the sovereign state, the ideology of Zimbabwe must be safeguarded by all means. And any signals that seem to contradict to that must be, taken with all the due care, so that we don't have a situation where we are back to a reversal of whatever was gained. So for me, it's not really about the bill. It's about understanding the ideology of the nation, of the Zimbabwe nation. Are we doing things that promote that ideology, or we're doing things that threaten that ideology? That's where people should really sit on and discuss about. So for us as a party, we are not willing to engage ourselves in whether the bill passes or not. We are willing to promote the ideology of the nation more than anything else.
So if I may follow up that, in your view, do you think NGOs are pushing for the reversal of independence?
It's not a direct push, but there is certainly an element of the ability to influence the ideology of the nation, of the state. So, if you try and trace whether the motive is intentional or not, you may not find clear-cut examples. But, the idea of the nation is that we have to be sovereign, we have to self-sustain, we have to be able to depend and live on ourselves, we have to be able to share wealth and promote the Zimbabweanness in us. It's not a secret that some of the NGOs clandestinely take sides or promote so-called democracy and fund and, promote certain questionable activities. But like I said, the ethos is not really in judging the bills, or it's in understanding the ideology of the nation. Because I think this is where we are lost as a country. We don't have a common ideology. And this is, as we will discuss, where the Nationalist Alliance Party comes in that we want to promote a certain understanding about ideological values of the state, rather than just the academic principles of economics and academic side of things, democracy, human rights and things, because the ideology of the nation is the one that is more important over and above everything else.
Do you, as an organization, do you believe in human rights?
It depends on what you call human rights. I have not come across a definition of what is human rights. We are not very keen as a party at this stage to center our arguments on the issues of human rights and the issues of democracy. We've got more important business to look at.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
If you don't want to center yourselves on human rights and on democracy, which are the fundamentals of why the liberation struggles or the liberation movements went to war for one man, one vote, and all those kind of. So what's your ideology based on?
You cannot have things wrongly put or prioritized just so that you achieve a certain end. Everything has got a priority. Human rights, democracy, all those things, they are important, yes. But the foundation in which those are practiced is most important. The ethos of the liberation of this country was that there needs to be a shared wealth, a common vision about sharing into the wealth of the nation, the ability to equally participate in the economy and the politics of the country. Now, when you speak of human rights from a perspective which does not articulate or result in that original foundation, then the ethos of human rights is not...
But can there be equality and people sharing wealth without basic human rights?
Yes, it's possible. What you want to achieve is an economy where, we have two groups of people, the settlers, the natives, trying to come together to form an inclusive economy, not an exclusive economy. So in that regard, the important thing would be to say, how do we create such an economy? That would be the basic thing. But then the issue of human rights depends on how you want to interpret human rights, as it were. For instance, if there are elements that are causing division and disgruntlement in the nation, which then are translated as an abuse of human rights. When people discuss the issue of the ideology of the nation, then everything becomes complicated, because your translation of what would be human rights would not necessarily be my translation of what is human rights. So that's why I said we need to understand, what do we mean when you speak of the so-called human rights?
Yeah, I find the take quite, can I say, strange when you talk about the so-called human rights, because Zimbabwe is a member of the UN, and if you look at all the chapter, in fact, our constitution has a Bill of Rights. So it's something that we have internalized as a country.
We have to be careful, Zenzele, when we speak about the issue of human rights, because if we are not careful, the issue of human rights can be used or abused to achieve another end. So we need to be careful. It's a fine line. I always like to give this example to say the world was not built on human rights, right? And it left certain people at a disadvantaged position. Therefore, we need to be careful when we speak about human rights in relation to the people that are disadvantaged, trying to reach out to be at a certain level with the developed places, as it were. So if the issue of human rights continues to create that gap or maintain or sustain that gap, then those human rights are questionable. So it's a fine line. We want human rights. Of course, they are good and constitutional provision, but we've got to be careful how the provision for human rights is articulated. You cannot have your children do things willy-nilly, and then your neighbor says you are abusing your children. I'm sure you've got a family set up, and you've got ethics, and you've got certain laws that you have in your own family. So your neighbor cannot try and influence your child to do things that are outside the context of your family and then claim that you are not abiding to human rights. So it's a careful atmosphere that we must balance carefully. That's why I said, as a party, the center of our message is not on human rights. The center of our message is not on democracy. The center of our message is on economic empowerment of the former marginalized people.
Yeah, you initially you talked about the ideology
Yes.
of your party, and you're coming up with that.
Yes.
What would you say is you've already started talking about it. Your main message is you want economic empowerment and nothing else.
We've got to understand the context of our party, in that it emanates from an understanding of what we call ideologies being at crisscross, or ideologies being in conflict. We have taken our time to study how it is that we got into this place, into this mess in the first place, where the economy is collapsing, where a certain group of people are disadvantaged, and where a certain class of people are well off. And we have then understood that difference in ideology, or an unclear ideology in the country, is the one that needs to be addressed. So the focus of our party is to say, what ideology can we bring about which gives us the results of an inclusive economy rather than an exclusive economy? And just to expand, if you look at the way the Rhodesian system was set up, massive human rights abuse, but the economy was doing well. Non-democratic space, but the economy was seemingly doing well. In fact, people forget that this economy of Rhodesia, which they so admire today, was so divisive and so callous that it led to a liberation war. So post-independence, we have got to find a common ideology that puts that objective ahead of everything else, that puts the national interest ahead of everything else. That is what we are pushing for as a party.
So your party won't mind very thriving with economy with no human rights?
That is a very unfair question. We are thriving for a society that is inclusive. That to me is a basic human right. If you are included in the economy, if you participate fully, if you are given an opportunity to fully participate in your economy, that is the most basic human right that you can ever desire. In the absence of economic empowerment, that is where the violation of basic human rights starts. So we cannot talk of human rights without looking at economic empowerment. You cannot talk of human rights without looking at the lives of the ordinary people. That is the basic and most fundamental human right. So we cannot divert our discussion away from that basic right of ability to participate in the economy, ability to thrive in the economy, and then start talk of other forms of human rights. That is the basic human right that even the Liberation War was fought for.
Some people have argued that one of the reasons why our economy is not doing well in Zimbabwe is corruption. And as your party, what's your stance on corruption?
We do not put it as number one reason. We are concerned about corruption. It's not a good thing. But it is not the ultimate result of the poor performance of our economy. The trick is, soon after independence, we did not realize that the economy that had been created by the British system, which created Rhodesia, was an exclusive economy. And we erroneously, as a government, by means of the, set for the government at that time, pursued that kind of a model where we prioritized education so that we get jobs, where we prioritized the expansion of industry, but we forgot that there was a big margin of people, 60% to be precise, 70% at then, which was not going to be able to qualify into that economy. So naturally, the economy started to perform badly because government was trying to absorb as many people as is possible. I'm sure you'll know that there was an influx from the rural areas to the urban centers. And government, naturally taking a socialist kind of position, was never going to be able to accommodate all those people. But also problem number two is that the capital was in the hands of the few, at that time mostly white people, and the land was also still in the hands of the white people. So disrupting that was always going to cause problems because the capitalists knew the valves and cables of how to connect that already existing economy. So what was supposed to happen in our view was that we were supposed to rearrange the economy so that we carefully and meticulously arrange it to accommodate the masses that have been segmented to the native tribal lands, who had been forgotten, who had disenfranchised, because those numbers were very significant. If you recall, I think at 1980, the population was 250,000 white people versus 6 million blacks. Surely the economy that Rhodesia had built was not designed for 6 million people. And yet the government ambitiously tried to accommodate all those people, which was going to be problematic in a way. So our understanding is that the idea of creating an inclusive economy was not pursued in the way that it would have achieved better results had the focus been on agriculture, had the focus being the people on the rural land, had the focus being on maximum utilization of the rural land. But most importantly, also in taking the rightful restoration of the agricultural space, because remember the native population thrived on agriculture, and that had been taken and destabilized by the colonization process. Those, in our view, were supposed to be the first and foremost important elements of rebuilding and integrating the economy.
Yeah, Ahmed, are you, moving from it, are you going to be contesting in the 2023 elections?
The desire is to contest, but there are impediments in the way. One of them being the issue to do with the amounts that have been gazetted by ZEC. So, inevitably we'll only know as the election day gets close, but we are preparing in anticipation of participating in that election.
Yeah, because my next question was going to ask you on the amounts, the fees for candidates, and say, as a party, what is your position?
We are very unhappy about it. ZEC has made it absolutely impossible for the small voices to be able to be heard. Remember, the concept of a Republican state is that people must be heard and people must participate freely in elections. The Constitution provides that we should be able to have multi-partyism. I avoid using the word democracy. Multi-partyism in the country. And, paying such fees really is a turn-off for many political parties. It is important to state that even if you look at the first and second Chimurenga, the first Chimurenga primary failed because the resources were not enough for the natives to face off with the powerful machine guns that the Europeans had. And I think in their minds, the Europeans felt they were going to conquer the natives to the point of submission and eventually dilution, which is what they did in Canada and in America and in Australia. But if you look, something special happened in Africa. Russia, China came into the picture, assisted the indigenous forces with weaponry, with resources, such that they were able to wage the war and face off with the imperialist forces. Now, that hand assisted the liberation struggle to manifest and inevitably achieve. Had those two countries not assisted the liberation movements, I'm sure Rhodesia would be still a colonial state up to now. So the issue of resources is very important, and the issue of support is very important. It cannot be that after gaining independence, we find ourselves in a space where it's now very expensive again to set up a party, contest, mobilize resources. I mean, this is, in our view, defeating the ends and gains of the independence.
Maybe as we conclude, are you willing to work with other political parties?
It depends on what the motive is. If the motive is for the empowerment of Native people, if it is for the purpose of the restitution of Native people, because our ideology is centered on restitution and compensation of all rural homesteads, of rearranging the agricultural space so that there is a reserved sector for the rural people, rearranging of the regional agricultural space, if it's for the establishment of a state bank which does not demand collateral from native and indigenous businesses, if the ideas are centered around that, then we can correlate. But if the motive is what we are accustomed to remove another government or oppose another, gang up so that you defeat another party, then with that sole idea being the objective, then the answer is definitely no.
So lastly, you talk about restitution of the native.
Yes.
Who's supposed to restitute that?
It does not matter where the funds come from. One thing that we will advocate for is the formation of the Restitution Commission, which will have to come up with mechanisms of how to restitute people. The point is the natives must be restituted. The sources of how to raise the money is academic. It can be achieved. There are many ways to pursue it, from the colonizers themselves, mobilizing local resources, working with partners. The idea is not just to give people money, it's to restore the agricultural space. And there are many ways to do that. It's not just money, it could be resources, it could be legal space, like I said, putting a certain portion of agriculture reserved specifically for natives. That will go a long way in restituting the native people, which is the primary objective that we have as a party.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And that was Divine Mhambi-Hove. He's the leader for the Nationalists Alliance Party and also the deputy chair for the Pollard, looking at international relations and re-engagement. And today we were talking about his party, the Nationalists, what they stand for, their views, and we quite discussed quite a lot of issues and on what their ideology is, and also how they think they're fed on Pollard. And of course, we hope that they will be contesting the elections. And as a person who is in Pollard, I hope they are going to lobby the powers that be so that ZEC can look at the issues of the candidates' fees, and so that we have more people contesting the presidential elections. The more, the merrier. That's what the democracy is for. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs, have a good day.